everyone knows the story. Moses is in the desert, sees a burning bush that doesn't burn up, and a voice speaks to him. When Moses asks who is speaking, the answer comes clearly, "I am that I am." Simple as that. 3,000 years of history, 3 great religions, billions of believers, all based on that answer. But Baruch Spinoza discovered something that changed everything. In 1670, Spinoza was studying the original biblical texts in Hebrew. Not the translations that came down to us, but the exact words that were written millennia ago. And when he reached that famous passage in Exodus, he stopped. The words that were there in the original Hebrew didn't say, "I am that I am." They said something completely different. Spinoza read and reread. He checked with other ancient texts. He consulted Hebrew grammars, and he came to a terrifying conclusion. For 3,000 years, humanity had believed in a wrong translation. The name that God really revealed to Moses had nothing to do with "I am that I am." It was something much simpler, more direct, and infinitely more revolutionary. When Spinoza tried to share this discovery, the reaction was immediate and brutal. He was excommunicated by the Jewish community with a curse that had never been used before, that his name be erased forever, that no one ever speak to him, that even his memory be considered cursed. Why? Because what he discovered wasn't just a translation error. It was something that could destroy the foundations of 3 entire religions. The truth that Spinoza found remained buried for 350 years. Few dared to revisit his discovery. Even fewer had the courage to spread it. But today that changes, because what God really said to Moses that morning in the desert is something everyone deserves to know. Something that will make you question everything you learned about religion, about God, about the very nature of reality. The greatest revelation in human history is about to be told, and it begins now. It was winter 1670 when Baruch Spinoza made the decision that would change not only his life, but potentially all human understanding of God. Sitting in his modest house, surrounded by the books that were his only true companions, he opened for the first time a Hebrew Bible with a different purpose. He no longer wanted to believe. He wanted to understand. Spinoza had been born into a respected Jewish family, educated in ancestral traditions, versed in sacred texts since childhood, but something had always bothered him. The translations he read in Latin, in Portuguese, in Dutch, they all seemed to carry a certain artificiality, as if the original words had been polished, domesticated, transformed into something more palatable for the masses. What if the translators had done more than translate? What if they had interpreted, edited, hidden? These questions had tormented him for years. Finally, he decided to investigate on his own. He began with the book of Exodus, with the most famous passage of all, the encounter between Moses and God at the burning bush. Everyone knew the story. Moses, fleeing Egypt after killing an overseer who was beating a Hebrew slave, was wandering in the desert of Midian when he saw something impossible, a bush on fire that was not consumed. He approached, and a voice spoke to him, identifying itself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But when Moses asked for the divine name, after all, how would he convince the Israelites that he had really spoken with God? The answer everyone knew was, "I am that I am." Spinoza opened the Hebrew text of the passage in Exodus 3:14. His eyes scanned the ancient words, the letters that had survived millennia of persecution, destruction, reconstruction. And then he stopped. The words were not, "I am that I am." In Hebrew, it was written, "Eya asher eya." At first glance, it might seem to mean the same thing. But Spinoza knew Hebrew better than most rabbis of his time. He knew that the verb eya was not simply am. It was a specific form of the verb to be, the first person singular of the imperfect, which indicates a continuous unfinished action in process, not "I am," but "I will be," or better still, "I am being." A present action, but in movement, in constant transformation. But there was more. The particle asher didn't mean that in the sense of identity. It meant that in the sense of cause, of process, of the one who makes it so that. Spinoza felt his heart racing. The words he was reading didn't form a philosophical declaration about the eternal and immutable nature of God. They formed something completely different. Ehyeh asher. Ehyeh didn't mean, "I am that I am." It meant, I will be the one who will make to be. Or, in a more precise translation, I will become the one who causes things to become. God wasn't presenting himself as a static, eternal, immutable being. He was revealing himself as a process, a force in constant movement, the one who transforms, who makes things happen, who is always becoming something new through his creations. Spinoza reread the passage dozens of times. He consulted other texts, other grammars. The conclusion was inescapable. For 3,000 years the world had believed in a translation that had transformed a dynamic, creative God in constant process of transformation into a static God, defined only by his own existence. But why had the translators done this? The answer was obvious and terrifying. A God who defines himself as I am that I am is a distant, absolute, immutable God. A God who demands worship, obedience, submission. A perfect God to sustain religious authorities, hierarchies, dogmas. But a God who presents himself as I will become the one who causes things to become is something completely different. It's a God who is present in every process of transformation, in every movement of nature, in every creative thought. A God who is not separated from the world, but is the active principle that makes the world move, grow, evolve. Such a God doesn't need intermediaries, doesn't demand temples or rituals, is present in every person who thinks, creates, transforms, is present in nature itself, in physical processes, in the movements of celestial bodies, in the growth of plants, in the evolution of ideas. Spinoza understood at that moment why this translation had been hidden. It wasn't just theology, it was revolution. If people knew that God had revealed himself not as a distant and immutable being, but as the active principle present in all transformation, the entire structure of organized religion would crumble. There would no longer be a need for priests to mediate the relationship with the divine. There would no longer be justification for dogmas that limited human thought. There would no longer be reason to separate the sacred from the mundane, the spiritual from the natural, God from creation. God would be recognized as what he really is, according to his own revelation. The creative force present in everything, the one who causes all things to become what they are. Spinoza closed the book and looked out the window. The world outside seemed the same, but for him it had changed completely. Every tree, every stone, every person walking down the street, everything was a manifestation of this God in constant process of creation, of this force that becomes through his own works. He knew this discovery would change his life. He knew that few would have the courage to accept such a radical truth, but he also knew he could no longer live pretending not to know what he had just discovered. The greatest lie in human history had been revealed, and now there was no going back. In the days following his discovery, Spinoza could no longer live normally. Every conversation, every prayer he heard, every sermon that reached his ears, everything sounded false, as if the whole world was participating in a great performance based on a fundamental lie. He tried to continue his routine, wake up, work on his optical lenses, his livelihood, study philosophy, dine alone, but his mind couldn't free itself from the discovery. Eia Asher Eia echoed constantly in his thoughts. It was then that he decided to investigate more deeply. If the translators had changed this fundamental passage, what else had they altered? Spinoza began a systematic analysis of the biblical text, comparing the original Hebrew versions with the most popular translations in Latin, Greek, and vernacular. What he discovered was even more frightening than he had imagined. The distortion wasn't limited to God's name. It was everywhere. In the book of Genesis, for example, the famous passage, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth," contained a Hebrew word that had been completely misinterpreted. The word bara, translated as created, didn't mean to create from nothing, like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It meant to separate and to organize, to give form to what already existed. The original text didn't describe a God creating the universe from absolute nothingness, but an organizing principle giving form and structure to a reality that was already present in some way. God wasn't presented as a creator external to the world, but as the force that organizes, separates, structures what already exists. Once again, the translators had transformed a dynamic and immanent concept into a static and transcendent concept. Spinoza continued his research, and found similar distortions in dozens of other passages. The word ruach, translated as Spirit of God, literally meant wind or breath, not a supernatural entity separate from nature, but the very vital force that moves all things. The Spirit of God was simply the active principle present in all natural movement. The expression image of God, used to describe the creation of man, didn't refer to a physical or spiritual resemblance to an anthropomorphic divine being. The Hebrew word tselem meant active representation. The human being wasn't created in God's likeness, but as an active representation of God, as a manifestation of the divine capacity to transform and create. Each new discovery confirmed the same terrifying conclusion. The original texts presented a vision of God radically different from what had been transmitted by organized religions. Not a supernatural being separated from the world, but the active principle present in all nature. Not an external legislator imposing arbitrary laws, but the immanent rationality that organizes and structures reality. It was at this moment that Spinoza understood why his discovery was so dangerous. If people knew that God had revealed himself as Ihye Asher Ihye, the one who becomes through what he causes to become, all justification for religious authorities would disappear. Why obey priests who claim to speak on behalf of a distant God, when God himself had revealed himself as the active principle present in every thinking person? If people knew that God hadn't created the world from nothing, but was the organizing force present in the world itself, all separation between sacred and profane would lose meaning. Why consider some places, some practices, some people more sacred than others, when everything would be equally a manifestation of divine activity? If people knew that they were created not in the likeness of an anthropomorphic God, but as active representation of divine creative capacity, all justification for hierarchies based on supposed proximity to God would crumble. Each person would be equally capable of expressing divine creativity through their thoughts and actions. Spinoza realized he wasn't dealing with just translation errors. He was facing a millennial conspiracy, not necessarily intentional but systematic, to hide the true nature of God revealed in the original texts. And then, an even more disturbing question occurred to him. If the translators had systematically distorted the presentation that God made of himself, what else had they hidden? What other fundamental truths had been buried under layers of interpretations convenient for religious power? At this moment, looking at you who follow this discovery, Spinoza would whisper, "Can you imagine what the world would be like if people knew who God really said he is? If they knew that he isn't in a distant heaven, but present in every creative thought, in every act of transformation, in every moment of growth and evolution?" Write in the comments. After knowing that I am isn't what God said, what other religious truths do you now question? What other translations might be hiding transformative realities? And if you're feeling that you need this journey of discovery, that you need to know how far this revelation goes, subscribe to the channel now, because we're just beginning to unearth the secrets that shaped human civilization, and you deserve to know the truth that has been hidden for so long. The discovery about God's true name was just the beginning. Spinoza soon realized he was facing something much bigger than isolated translation errors. He was discovering a systematic pattern of distortions that had shaped all Western understanding of spirituality, morality, and human nature itself. His next investigation led him to one of the most fundamental questions of human existence. What happens when we die? For centuries, Christianity had promised eternal life for the righteous and eternal punishment for sinners. Traditional Judaism also spoke of rewards and punishments after death. Islam structured all its ethics around paradise and hell. All these religions based their doctrines on biblical interpretations about the nature of the soul and human destiny after death. But when Spinoza examined the original Hebrew texts, he found something completely different. The word that had been translated as soul in the biblical texts was nephesh. However, nephesh didn't mean an immortal substance separated from the body, as the translation suggested. It simply meant life, breath, vitality, the active principle that animates a living body. When the Bible said that God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life and man became a living soul, the original text wasn't describing the insertion of an immortal substance into a mortal body. It was describing the moment when organized matter became capable of living, breathing, acting. The moment when the divine vital force itself was expressed through a specific physical form. The soul, according to the original texts, wasn't something the person had. It was what the person was when alive and active. This discovery completely revolutionized understanding about death. If the soul was simply the vitality present in a living body, then death wasn't the separation between soul and body, but the end of the organization that allowed life to be expressed through that specific form. But this didn't mean total annihilation. Spinoza discovered that the original texts presented a much more sophisticated vision. The vital force that had been expressed through a specific person didn't disappear with death. It returned to the universal active principle from which it had emerged, not as a preserved individual personality, but as creative energy reintegrated into the cosmic process of continuous transformation. It was like a wave that, when breaking on the shore, doesn't cease to exist. It simply returns to the ocean from which it had temporarily emerged. This vision eliminated both the fear of total annihilation and the fantasy of eternal personal survival. Death became simply a natural transformation, the return of individual vital energy to the universal cosmic process. But the implications of this discovery went far beyond the question of death. If there was no immortal soul separated from the body, then the entire basis of traditional religious morality crumbled. Organized religions had built their ethical systems around rewards and punishments after death. Be good to gain paradise, avoid evil to escape hell. All morality was based on fear of eternal punishment or hope of eternal reward. But if the original texts promised neither threatened eternal life after death, then what would be the basis of ethics? Spinoza found the answer in a Hebrew word that had been systematically mistranslated, tzedek. This word had been translated as justice in the legalistic sense, conformity with divine laws that would be rewarded after death. But tzedek didn't mean obedience to external commands. It meant adequacy, harmony, correct functioning, acting according to each being's genuine nature. Original biblical ethics wasn't based on obedience to external laws, but on understanding one's own nature and acting in harmony with it. Being ethical meant fully realizing what one is by nature, completely expressing the divine creative force present in each person. This discovery transformed morality from a system of external prohibitions into a process of self-knowledge and self-realization. It was no longer about obeying commands to avoid punishment, but about understanding one's own nature to live fully and creatively. Spinoza realized this was the true revolution hidden in the original texts. Not just a new theology, but a new anthropology. The human being wasn't presented as a sinner needing external salvation, but as an expression of divine creativity itself, capable of understanding his nature and living ethically through this understanding. But there was still more. If ethics wasn't based on rewards and punishments after death, but on full realization of human nature in this life, then the very notions of good and evil needed to be rethought. Spinoza discovered that the Hebrew words translated as good and evil, tovi and ra, didn't carry absolute moral connotations. Tov meant adequate, functional, that which promotes life and growth. Ra meant inadequate, dysfunctional, that which impedes growth and realization. Good and evil weren't absolute metaphysical categories, but practical evaluations of what promotes or impedes the flourishing of life. An action was good if it contributed to growth, creativity, realization of natural potentialities. It was evil if it prevented this flourishing. This perspective eliminated both rigid moralism and radical relativism. There were clear criteria for evaluating actions, but these criteria were based on empirical observation of what promotes or impedes human flourishing, not on arbitrary commands from external authorities. Spinoza understood he had discovered not just distortions in biblical translations, but a complete system of thought that had been systematically obscured, a system that presented God as immanent, creative process, the human being as expression of divine creativity, ethics as realization of genuine nature, and life as opportunity to fully express the creative potentialities present in each person. This vision didn't eliminate the sacred, it intensified it, but it transferred the sacred from institutions and rituals to life itself, to every creative act. to every moment of growth and understanding. It was spirituality without superstition, ethics without moralism, religion without dogmas. It was, Spinoza realized, what the original biblical texts really taught before being distorted to sustain structures of religious power. And this led him to an even more radical question. If so much had been systematically distorted, did the very history of revelation need to be retold? The discovery that not only God's name, but also the nature of the soul and morality had been systematically distorted, led Spinoza to an even bolder investigation. He decided to examine the very history of biblical revelation to determine what had really happened in the formative events of the great religions. His first question was, who was Moses really? Religious traditions presented Moses as a supernatural leader, capable of impossible miracles, direct receiver of divine laws carved in stone by God himself. But when Spinoza examined the original texts with critical eyes, he found a very different story. The Moses of the original text was presented not as a performer of supernatural miracles, but as a political and philosophical genius who had understood something revolutionary about the nature of reality and social organization. The burning bush passage, when read in Hebrew without traditional distortions, revealed not an encounter with a supernatural being, but a moment of profound insight about the nature of the creative force present in all natural processes. Moses hadn't conversed with an external entity. He had intuitively understood the nature of the active principle that organizes and transforms all things. When God revealed himself as Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, the one who becomes through what he causes to become, Moses was discovering that the force responsible for all transformation and growth wasn't a distant legislator, but the rational principle present in nature and in the human mind. This understanding transformed Moses into a revolutionary leader. He realized that if this creative principle was present in all human beings, then it was possible to create a society based not on obedience to external authorities, but on rational understanding and voluntary cooperation. The famous tablets of the law hadn't been supernaturally carved on a mountain. They were developed by Moses as an ethical code based on his understanding of human nature, and the principles necessary for a just and prosperous society. The 10 Commandments weren't arbitrary orders from a cosmic legislator, but practical discoveries about what promotes or impedes the flourishing of a human community. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. Not because an external God had so ordered, but because these actions are destructive to any society that wants to prosper. Spinoza discovered that all Mosaic legislation could be understood this way, not as supernatural revelation, but as one of the first attempts in human history to create a social system based on reason and understanding of human nature, instead of based only on force and traditional authority. But there was more. The original text suggested that Moses had understood something even more revolutionary, that this capacity to rationally understand the nature of things and act according to this understanding was present in principle in all human beings. The expression chosen people didn't refer to an arbitrary selection made by a tribal god, but to the fact that the Israelites had chosen to accept a way of life based on reason and ethics, instead of living only under the authority of brute force like other peoples of the time. They were chosen, not by God, but by themselves, by choosing to live according to rational principles, instead of merely following traditions or obeying absolutist kings. This interpretation explained why the Israelites were constantly warned against idolatry. It wasn't about divine jealousy against other gods, but a warning against the human tendency to substitute rational understanding for submission to external authorities, whether they be stone images, autocratic kings, or even dogmatic interpretations of the Mosaic tradition itself. True idolatry was abandoning the capacity to think for oneself and submitting blindly to any external authority, whether it be a statue, a king, or a priest. Spinoza realized this understanding transformed all biblical history. The great characters weren't performers of supernatural miracles, but individuals who had understood important aspects of human nature and social organization, and had tried to implement these understandings in their communities. Abraham hadn't conversed with an external God who promised him lands and descendants. He had understood that universal ethical principles were more important than local tribal traditions, and had created a new form of social organization based on this understanding. Isaac and Jacob weren't passive receivers of divine promises, but continuators of the Abrahamic project of developing forms of social life based on universal ethical principles instead of particular tribal customs. The prophets weren't receivers of supernatural messages, but thinkers who had understood the social and political consequences of abandoning rational ethical principles. Their prophecies were predictions based on empirical observation. Societies that abandon justice and cooperation inevitably enter decline and conflict. The entire biblical narrative was revealed as the history of a revolutionary social experiment, the attempt to create human communities based on reason, ethics, and understanding of human nature, instead of based only on tradition, authority, and force. And the most impressive, this experiment had been partially successful. The original biblical texts preserved profound insights about human psychology, social organization, and ethical principles that remained valid millennia later. But these insights had been systematically obscured by supernatural interpretations that transformed them into religious dogmas. What had been discovered as rational understanding was transformed into irrational belief. What had been developed as universal ethical principles was transformed into particular religious laws. Spinoza understood he wasn't just correcting wrong translations. He was recovering a lost intellectual tradition, a tradition that had anticipated by millennia many of the discoveries of modern philosophy and science about human nature and social organization. The ancient Hebrews, according to the original texts, had understood that human beings are expressions of the creative force present in nature, capable of rationally understanding their own nature and organizing societies based on this understanding. They had discovered that ethics needn't be based on external authorities, but can be developed through empirical understanding of what promotes or impedes human flourishing. They had realized that true spirituality doesn't consist of rituals and beliefs, but in the full realization of the creative capacities present in each person. These discoveries had been revolutionary in their time. They continued to be revolutionary in Spinoza's time, and perhaps they were even more revolutionary today, in an era when humanity has the scientific knowledge and technological possibilities to implement these understandings on a global scale. The discovery that the original biblical texts contained a rational philosophy systematically hidden by supernatural interpretations led Spinoza to an even deeper investigation.
Come on in and grab your coffee, and we're going to praise God. Wait for God's word. Thank God that we are here together as the body of Christ. It's so good to be with you guys, family. Sing with me. Only trust Him. Only trust Him. Only trust Him now. We're going to trust You this morning, Lord. For He has saved me. Lord, You saved me. You have saved me now. Thank God for Your salvation. Give Him glory, give Him praise. For You have saved me. Thank You, Lord, for saving me. You have saved me now. All right. I love those old hymns. That's why I sing the old hymns. I don't think they're sung enough these days, you know, and plus nobody gets paid off of them. I don't like this, marketplace thing. Nothing wrong with people getting paid, but then you wonder if they're writing songs for Jesus. They write a song that sounds like this song. The publisher says, oh, write this song like that. And then you wonder, who's really writing it? And when people are singing it, who are you really singing to? So that's why I do the old hymns. Anyway, good to have you guys this morning. Have my coffee. So I'm excited today for a couple of reasons. First of all, I got to tell you, it's my anniversary, well, our anniversary, Shanita and I, and we are in a special place, drove all the way from Texas, where we had the film festival, and I'm going to tell you about that in a minute, but I want to share with you where we are today, this morning. Let me put this up here. Now, you see a sign in the back. No, we did not open a flower shop. We're in Heavener, Oklahoma this morning. Heavener, Oklahoma. It is the town where my, I guess, family comes from, the roots of Heavener, Oklahoma. Let's go to. And I even found the Heavener First Assembly of God Church, okay? And it was so cool. I mean, walking through this town and seeing your name all over the town and, researching where you came from and how my ancestors married into the Choctaw Indian tribe and, the Trail of Tears and just the history. Anyway, it's been really special. This is our 34th wedding anniversary. Very special. I'll bring Shanita on to see if she's there. Well, good morning. How are you?
Wow, happy anniversary. You have made these 34 years the most memorable of my life by far.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're a gift from God. And that's truth, and I've told you this before. You are a gift from God. Anyway, I really appreciate you, Shanita, and I'm going to bring you back on just a little bit. We're going to talk about what's been happening the past several weeks. We've been traveling thanks to all of our family out there and encouragement, the prayers and the financial gifts, been able to have us travel all around for the past month. We've been traveling all around the country, LA, to preach, and this young man right here gave his life to the Lord. I think his name is Martin. Because of you out there, family, another soul, another name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. I want you to look right there. This is because of you. We're talking eternity, things that are eternal. And then also, we were able to preach at the Warrior Bride amongst survivors of human trafficking and SRA and abuse, and people gave their life to the Lord there. We had people praising God, and then we just came from the Content Film Festival where we won an award. You can see right there, and praise God for that. But I was able to get up in front of everyone and say, look, because the show that we won the award on wasn't Last Evangelist, it was on David Heavener Investigates, about do demons attack your sleep, how they attack your sleep. And I was able to get up in front of everyone, Christians, 500 people, and say, listen, I'm going to paraphrase, but Jesus said when the 72 came back and said, hey, the demons listen to us, he said, that's fine. You can be happy and thankful for that, but what you really need to be thankful for is that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life, that you have eternal salvation. So I was able to get up in front of a room full of a lot of Christians and just preach that little sermon to them. And it's because of our family, Shanita, everyone listening out there that's been praying for us, encouraging us, financially supporting us. We're able to travel these different places and preach, sing, and share the gospel.
Yes.
All right.
So grateful to report a huge praise report, a resurrection report. So I'm looking forward to being back with you at the end.
Yep, we're going to report on this boy who was raised from the dead. My son prayed over him along with the team, along with your team, and he was raised from the dead. The father of how many children? 4? No, his wife was just giving birth as he died in a motorcycle crash. But then something happened, so y'all stay with me so we can talk about this. All right, love you. Our 34th wedding anniversary, folks, let me tell you something. If you've had bad relationships, maybe you don't have a relationship at all, you're older, you say, David, I've given up. Don't give up. I had so many bad relationships, dating, and it was just terrible. It seemed like the same kind of girl over and over again. Not judging the girl, it was all about me. And I never thought I would ever have anyone in my life. And then God gave me Shanita. It was a gift, see? And I didn't know that. But Shanita had to almost raise me spiritually because, I was just all over the place, right? And so basically, think of a child. She raised a small child spiritually. And I tell people, I said, I'm the only hell my wife ever raised, right? And so, and it's kind of true. But anyway, let's get to the sermon this morning. I want to I want to talk to you guys about something that's so close to my heart here that if we don't understand this, if we don't get a grasp on what I'm getting ready to talk about, what I'm praying God is going to deliver to us this morning, we're just going to keep going around in circles, all right, doing the same thing over and over again, asking God to do something, and yet it's the same stuff over and over again. I mean, what is that? It's about the church is in the same place as it's always been. If you look at it, it's probably even worse. You know, they're saying now, if you look at statistics, folks, that they're saying that there's as much divorce in the Christian community as there is in the secular community. What?
Maybe you could eat some yogurt at
I mean, what is this all about?
All you want to do is pop.
And you look at the church week after week, month after month, year after year.
Nothing that stresses your mouth.
And you go, well, it's kind of in the same place as it's always been. It doesn't seem like it's really changed. Has it?
Don't eat anything.
And why do I keep bringing this up? Because I care about the church. I care about God's people.
Okay.
And so the question I'm going to ask you this morning, which I think is so important, is, are you doing church? Or are you being the church? So, what does this mean exactly? And God laid it on my heart. I want to share it with you. And I'm going to take you through my conversation I had with God a few days ago, which I have often. And by the way, praying is not just going somewhere and bowing your head. And, you know, it can be, and having this moment, that can be. But praying is a communication with God. You can sit there in the morning, have your coffee, have your notebook, and be praying just by talking to God. Hey, God, you don't have to go through these rituals. I mean, God appreciates that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I'm just saying, I think we have this idea of praying as being, some type of ritual we've got to perform, right? You don't even need to close your eyes out of respect. I do a lot of times. I bow my head out of respect, reverence. Okay. So, if you look at the church today, and you see the disease, you see the divorce, you see the nonsense that's going on, and it's getting worse. And it seems like it's normal. Why? Because we live with it. It just continues on and on. So I went to God, and I said to God, just give me a morsel. Give me something that I can understand, that I can give to the people, or you can give to the people. I can't do anything. Because I'm starving. I need a morsel. I'm hungry. I need to know. I need to know, why is it that your people, so-called, seem to be stuck? Why are we not doing what it is you said we could do, and greater things you said we can do? Why? Why do we keep listening to the sermons and reading the scripture that says these things shall follow? You will cast out demons. You will heal the sick.
That was not in the original manuscript.
Preach the gospel. Why do we keep hearing this, but why don't we do it?
If Genesis 1 is an account of the creation of the world, why is the world recreated in Genesis 2? Dr. Bart Ehrman joins me today to talk about whether these accounts can be understood as one single story, or if something else is going on. Welcome to Misquoting Jesus with Bart Ehrman, the only show where a 6-time New York Times best-selling author and world-renowned Bible scholar uncovers the many fascinating, little-known facts about the New Testament, the historical Jesus, and the rise of Christianity. I'm your host, Megan Lewis. Let's begin. Welcome back to Misquoting Jesus, everybody. Today we are talking about the creation accounts found in Genesis 1 and 2. We also have some listeners' questions at the end, so be sure to stick around for all of those. Bart, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing well. Busy as always. As happens, something lands on your table. It's like, And so I just have my page proofs for my new book on the ethics of Jesus. My page proofs. The first pass at the page proofs arrived, and I've got to go through that. And you have to read through them carefully, word by word, make sure there are no misspellings or mistakes or stupid things you say. And so that's time-consuming on top of other things, but it's it's kind of fun to see that you don't have to do the research anymore, at least.
Are page proofs essentially the manuscript put laid out as it will be published?
Yeah, what happens is when you submit the manuscript, then a copy editor. First, the editor goes over it and suggests changes, either millions or a few. And then the copy editor, when you make those, the copy editor goes through to make sure that it's the grammar and the spelling and everything, punctuation's right. And then you have to go through all that. Then they set it up the way it'll be in the book, and those are the page proofs. And at Simon & Schuster, the company I work with, is you do that, you send that back, the changes you need to make, and then they send you another set. It's a never-ending story. It just goes on forever.
And eventually you get a book published.
Eventually you get a book published. You think you're done when you're done. You're not done. So how's your busy life?
Good. Busy. Similarly, but no, good. Everything is ticking along as it should be. We've got Halloween in a few weeks, so I'm kind of in the throes of costume creation. We're making pyro costumes, and Oliver and I have spent a few weeks making a giant treasure chest out of cardboard, which he's quite excited about. He wants to fill the whole thing with candy. Given it's about 2 feet high, I'm not sure that's economically viable. I'm trying to explain that we can just put a tray insert in the top, so it looks like candy.
All right.
So far, he's not going for that yet.
Well, ambition is good.
It is.
It can be good.
Now, before we get to the topic proper, I wanted to ask a question about whether your academic interests or research interests have changed over the years, or if they've kind of remained relatively stable.
Oh God, no, they've changed all over the place. In good ways. Always in expansion. When I first got interested in doing a PhD in New Testament studies, I was interested only in analyzing Greek manuscripts and comparing Greek manuscripts with the New Testament to each other. But I knew to get a job teaching, I'd have to be able to teach kind of broadly in New Testament. Most of my training was actually in New Testament interpretation and the history of early Christianity, so not in analyzing manuscripts. But then when I got the job at Chapel Hill, it was supposed to be a job in ancient Mediterranean religions, broadly. And my first PhD seminar that I taught at UNC Chapel Hill was on Greek and Roman religions. That was a crash course for me to begin with, because it was not what I was trained in. But I did, I taught myself a lot of stuff. I read millions of things, and now that's something that I do. But then after I wrote my textbook on the New Testament, after I spent years writing stuff on the New Testament, I got especially even more interested in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century Christianity. And so most of my PhD classes over the years have actually been on 2nd and 3rd century Christianity. And that continues to be an interest. And there's so many topics within that. So, when I write books, they're usually like very different kinds of things, and that's great. So my interests have definitely changed, they developed, and when I acquired new interests, I haven't lost my interest in the old interests. And so it's kind of cumulative, which is good.
Excellent, thank you. Now, we're talking about, as I said in the beginning, Genesis 1 and 2 and the creation stories found within those. You're primarily a New Testament scholar. Genesis is obviously a book of the Old Testament. How often have you had to talk about these passages in Genesis?
Well, yeah, roughly my entire career. My secondary field in my PhD, both my master's and my PhD, my secondary field was Hebrew Bible. And so early on, like my first semester in my
God damn it!
My first master's, 3-year master's program, my first semester, I took Hebrew, and so I had to learn Hebrew and deal with the Bible in Hebrew. And Genesis 1 and 2 is obviously really, really important for anybody who's a Bible scholar, because it's the beginning of the Bible, and these are the passages that people still read a lot and believe. And they obviously created huge problems in the history of Christianity over the last 200 years, especially 300 years, because of developments of science. And so they are passages that are important to the Bible, there are passages important to Judaism, there are passages important to Christianity, and they're naturally important to anybody who's a biblical scholar.
Now, for those who aren't familiar with them or with the book as a whole, what does Genesis contain? What is it primarily interested in recording?
The entire book of Genesis, or these 2 chapters? The entire book?
The entire book, then we'll get to the second.
Yeah. Well, so Genesis is the first book of the Pentateuch. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy that were traditionally ascribed to Moses. Moses was said to have authored these. He's the main figure in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. He's the one that leads the people out of Egypt during the Exodus, and to whom God gives the law, and a good chunk of those books are about Moses and the law and the Exodus. But Genesis is kind of a setup for that. So the word Genesis means something like beginnings, and it begins in the beginning with the creation of the world. With God creating the world, and then the book of Genesis it's kind of setting up what's going to happen at the Exodus, because the Exodus begins with the children of Israel being enslaved in Egypt, and Genesis in a way is kind of setting that up, because it begins with what scholars call the primeval history, so like kind of history before there's history. There's the creation, there's Adam and Eve, they're getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden, there's Cain and Abel, and then eventually there's a flood, the Noah's flood, and the Tower of Babel, and all that happens in the first 11 chapters. And then starting in chapter 12, a man called Abram, later renamed Abraham, is called by God, because the world is corrupt again, and he calls one person, and he's going to make descendants from this one person, his chosen people. And so the Jews are the descendants of Abraham. And so it goes through Abraham and his son Isaac and his son Jacob and his 12 sons, and it goes through that way up to the end of Genesis.
Now, the first 2 chapters specifically are creation accounts. They, like you said, they're a primeval history. They kind of start with the creation of the physical world. Now, they're understood by scholars to be distinct and separate narratives composed by different people. Can you tell us about some of the differences in between the 2?
You know, I think a lot of people just read these and just assume it's the same thing. But one thing I do with my students when I teach Hebrew Bible, or just in any kind of context where this is involved, I just have them go through the book of Genesis, chapter 1, and it gives the account of God creating the world and everything in it in 6 days, and then resting on the 7th, and I just have them list, okay, what happens when? First, God does this, then he does that, then he does this, and does the other thing, and you're going to go through the days of creation and what gets created and when. Then I have them do the same thing with Genesis chapter 2. When is the first thing created, what's next, and then compare their lists. And you know, they never thought about doing that. A lot of them have read these books before. It never occurs to them to have done that. Once they do it, they look at their list and say, what? Wait a second. That doesn't seem to work. Yeah, it doesn't seem to work. In other words, so Genesis 1 gives the account of creation in 6 days. Genesis 2 focuses on the creation of Adam, and then Adam and Eve, and everything else. But when you look at the way they're set up, it's clear they're very different.
If we look specifically at the creation of humans, what are the main differences there between the 2 accounts?
So the way Genesis 1 works is in the beginning, God creates the heaven and the earth, and the first thing he says is, "Let there be light," and light is created, and it goes from there. He creates light. He creates a dome to separate the waters from above from the water below. He's creating the physical world, and then he ends up creating plant life. And then he creates the animals of the air and the sea. And the climax is on day 6, when God creates humans. He creates them male and female. And so this is the final thing of creation. It's the climax creation, and you can see this kind of continuum from creating things that are not alive, like the earth, to things that are alive, like the various kinds of animals, to finally the pinnacle of life, which is he creates humans.
How does Genesis 2 differ if Genesis 1 has humanity kind of being the pinnacle of God's creative efforts? Where does humanity fit in Genesis 2?
Well, the interesting thing is that in both Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, the creation of humans is the point. Because so in Genesis 1, it's the climax. In Genesis 2, it's the beginning. It's the first thing God does. And my students note that it says quite explicitly that before God had created any of the plants or any of the animals or anything else, first he created Adam. And so it begins with him taking dust of the earth and forming it into a humanoid shape that's looks like a human on the ground, but it's just this stuff made out of dirt. And then he breathes into it. And this being on the ground then becomes a living being. And that's how Adam comes into existence, because God breathes life into him. And that's before there are any plants or before there are any animals. The animals end up getting created because Adam's kind of lonely and he needs some help. So God tries the animals. None of them work, and then he ends up creating woman at the end. So the man is created first, the woman's created last, and then in between them are the plants and the animals.
And in Genesis 1, men and women are created at the same time?
Yeah, apparently. It says, there are also difficulties with these passages, but in Genesis 1, it's where God says, let us create humans in our own image. Male and female, he created them. And he creates them like he created everything else. He speaks a word and it happens. So when he says, let there be light, boom, there's light. And then, when he says, let the earth produce fruit, boom, it produces plants. And so he just speaks things and it happens. And so it happens simultaneously in Genesis on the sixth day, that both men and women are created male and female.
So what do these differences tell us, or tell scholars, about the interests and the concerns of the people who wrote them?
Well, for one thing, the people who wrote these things are not interested in modern science. So when you actually look carefully at these, it is interesting. A lot of people have pointed out that if you look at the 6 days of creation, the basic structure is kind of like how it happened. The first thing that happens is you get inanimate stuff created, and this world comes into existence, and it is, and the plants are the first to emerge on the world, and then various kinds of animals emerge, and then humans emerge last. And so, generally, it's sort of how things happened. But it's clear they don't. It's not a scientific understanding of things. For several reasons. I mean, to begin with, the first thing that God does is He creates light, and then He separates the light from the darkness. So somehow it wasn't separated before that. But the odd thing is that God, He creates light, the very first thing, but He doesn't create the sun, moon, and stars until day 4. So where's the light coming from? But not only that, but before day 4, before there's the sun, moon, and stars, He creates the plants. Photosynthesis wasn't kind of available to the scientific world when these things were written, because it's got plants before it's got a sun. What? And it's got light before there's any sources of light. And so it's kind of, it isn't. So I think the first thing to be said is that, what this person is about, not what many people today value, which is really trying to understand what actually happened. People try to take this text and kind of mold it into modern understandings of the universe, so let there be light, oh, Big Bang, and so you kind of try to do it, and you end up saying, well, it says 6 days, but it doesn't mean 6 days, it means geological periods, and so these days are millions of years long, billions of years long, or whatever. And when you actually look at this text, it's clear none of that's right. I'll just say this about the day thing. This text really means days. It means a 24-hour day. One way you know that is at the end of each day it says, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. Well, evenings and mornings tells you he's thinking in terms of a 24-hour day.
When did scholars first start to really notice that these are probably different accounts rather than the same account, either separated or written in a slightly different fashion?
Well, so there are two kind of issues. One is that when did scholars start recognizing that these can't be scientifically accurate, and when did they start recognizing that there actually seem to be two different accounts? And for that, which is what you're asking about, I mean, rabbis throughout the centuries have recognized difficulties like this in the text, and rabbis would have devised ways of trying to understand how they both can be true, and develop sophisticated ways of interpretation to try and account for the differences. But the differences really are clear to anybody who reads them quite carefully. And so that itself is not a modern discovery. I think the modern discovery is that recognizing these differences that are significant on numerous levels leads to an understanding of where these accounts came from. Because among the differences, you definitely get a different order of creation, what created when, and there are contradictions between these two accounts. The writing style is different between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. The literary style is different. God has a different name in Genesis 1 from Genesis 2. And so he's called different things. And so there are like this range of things that people start paying close attention to, and that's what leads in the modern period to the understanding that we're probably dealing with two different authors here.
I see. And do we know, or I'm assuming we do know because we have books, when did this kind of understanding of two different authors really start to take off in biblical scholarship?
Well, it had been floating around. I mean, all of these things, just about everything we talk about in here can be traced back to the Enlightenment. I mean, it's when people started recognizing that the Bible, there are people who began recognizing that the Bible is a very human book. And for many of these people, it didn't mean it also was not a divine book. It could be both divine and human. But if it's human, we have to take seriously its human characteristics. And of course, in the Enlightenment, you start getting deists, for example, and other people who kind of continue. They believe in a God, but they don't think that they don't think truth comes from revelation from God. And that truth comes by looking around the world and figuring it out. And that's how science develops. You can't have science if you think that everything comes to you by revelation. There's no reason to do an experiment. Just you get the revelation. This is boring. And so it began. The idea of there being different authors began most seriously in the 19th century, and scholars tried to puzzle out why you have, not just in Genesis 1 and 2, but throughout Genesis and throughout the entire Pentateuch, why it is that you've got these contradictory things, these contradictions going on all over the place. Why are there different writing styles? Why are there different names for the deity? Why is this all this? And it kind of came to a climax in the middle of the 19th century or so, and it famously was developed by a German scholar called Wellhausen, he didn't make all this up, but he kind of developed it into a system that continued to be significant for scholars, probably still today in some ways. But Wellhausen came up with the idea that he didn't come up with the idea. He popularized the idea that the Pentateuch, the 5 books of allegedly of Moses, in fact, are made up of 4 different sources, written at 4 different times by 4 different authors that themselves were based on earlier traditions and stories and things. But so this is called the 4-source hypothesis, and it's J, E, D, and B. They're called. There are different reasons for these sources are identified by those initials. And so some people will have heard of the JEDP theory or the documentary hypothesis, and that's what it's referring to. That you get different accounts. And so some parts are J, some are E, some are D, some are B.
Thank you. We're not going to dive down that particular rabbit hole this week because that is at least 3 episodes all by itself. We're going to take a very brief break. I've got a couple of announcements and then we'll get right back to the conversation. We are excited to announce a brand new discussion series called Face to Face on the Bible. These are live, moderated conversations where 2 leading scholars engage in a friendly exchange on hot-button issues in biblical studies. Our first events will be held on October 21st and October 26th, and will feature 3 discussions on the Gospel of John. On October 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, AJ Levine and Hugo Mendes will discuss history and propaganda in John. On Sunday, October 26th, there will be 2 more sessions, one at 11 p.m. Eastern with Paul Fredrickson and Robin Walsh on the historical reliability of John, followed at 2:30 p.m. Eastern by Mark Goodacre and Bart Ehrman, we know that man, on whether John knew the synoptics. But why are we doing this?
Well, I've got to say, this was my brainstorm. I've been involved with a lot of debates before, but it's what I think. I just thought, people would love to hear 2 scholars who are experts on something talk about it, and often there'll be differences. So I don't know with the other 2 face-to-faces. I don't know how much these other.
This is boring as shit.
If you want to support the predator poachers catching the sickest both near and far, go to the pinned comment. If you're on Rumble, press the red join button to see over 30 videos early and uncensored for only $7 a month. We can't do this without your help, so join our locals.
What's up, guys? Before this video starts, be sure to follow us on all platforms, including on Rumble, which you can find in the pinned comment. This platform has been giving a lot of people like us a lot of problems lately, and Rumble is a lot more receptive to free speech and whatnot. So be sure to follow us on Rumble. Any video on here you can also find on Rumble, and if you're looking for a video and can't find it on here, it'll be on our Rumble. So be sure to follow us on Rumble in the pinned comment. Like the video.
What's up, guys? A lot of you guys may know about the Gordon Flowers hoodie. However, we also have a Fried Pickles hoodie, as you can see right here, and Gordon Flowers sweatshirts that you can get in many, many different colors. Show your support for the Gordon Flowers movement and the PP movement by getting one of these. I can tell you, they are very, very comfortable. Like, in all seriousness, they are, and I actually do wear them. So, be sure to get one of these and enjoy the video.
This channel is a group of investigative journalists who make educational documentaries showcasing the educated society, especially parents and legal guardians, about potential scenarios that result from young people and adults conversating online if left unchecked. We conduct thorough interviews with consenting adults in an attempt to understand their perspective on why they partake in these conversations online with people that are not of age. The goal of the interviews in these videos and the videos themselves is to gain an understanding of the perspective of the individual being interviewed, so parents and our society to be educated and aware of potential thought processes and desires of adults online to unsupervised persons not of age. These videos are not to cyberbully, harass, degrade, accuse, or threaten any individuals partaking in the interview process or in the video itself. We do not condone any of these actions. These videos are strictly educational. we grant full permission for academia, which is any class or setting, or scholarly papers to show or cite our videos. To ensure that these videos are strictly used for educational purposes, we strictly adhere to YouTube's community guidelines, such as not revealing someone's personally identifiable information, in other words, PII. YouTube defines personally identifiable information as their home address, email addresses, signing credentials, phone numbers, passport number, medical records, or bank account information. We thoroughly look at and edit our videos to ensure that none of this information about any individual is shown in our videos. To ensure extra privacy for each person as a subject of an interview in any of our videos, as of September 1st, 2022, to thoroughly comply with YouTube's harassment and bullying policy, there will be no mention or information about the last name or first name of any person interviewing in our videos. Due to potential illegal activities discussed in our videos, law enforcement in the respective jurisdictions we conduct these interviews in is notified of each interview and video filmed by us. We are not accusing any individual interview of being guilty or committing a crime. That is the job of law enforcement. We are not vigilantes, and we do not condone vigilantism or vigilante behavior, such as taking the law into your own hand and we're not notifying law enforcement when suspected crime takes place. We are investigative journalists. Trigger warning. Some of what could be discussed in these videos can be sensitive to some, emotional, or stressful. The only goal of these videos is to educate the public. At the end of each video, as of September 1st, 2022, there will be an educational portion at the end to discuss what we'll talk about in the video and discuss what people can take from that video and learn from and tell others about. Our goal here is to bring awareness and educate the public. Now the video will start.
I'm just sucking the fuck out of you. Guys, that was fucking stupid.
How's it going? Package for Mark. How's it going? Hey, Gordon. Nice to meet you. We've got some stuff to Lily we should probably go over, okay? You want to kind of do it where people can't really hear? Stuff to Lily we should probably go over. Okay, on Instagram and some stuff, okay?
Shit.
Anywhere quiet
you
we
can
can
kiss
call
that
you?
fucking night goodnight.
Okay, I got 2 people with me for safety, alright? So since I'm going into your property, I am going to be recording, that's for your safety and mine, okay? Because I understand you're a bigger guy, I'm a bigger guy, alright?
Where are you
From Houston.
But, like, with...
Well, what was the group called? I know you're young enough, okay? You're in your early 20s, alright? So that's why I'm just here to talk to you, okay? Because there's a lot kind of, you know. Got any weapons, man? Alright. Sorry to meet you like this.
Yeah.
Are your parents home?
They're not.
Okay.
You want to come in?
I'm just for my safety, I'd rather than none of us are packing or anything.
I'm not either. I don't really. This is pretty embarrassing.
Oh yeah, no, I get it, man. It's hard to talk about. I don't make sure your parents weren't home. I thought they weren't, and like I said, I'm not trying to bring this to your neighbors, anybody. I'm just trying to talk to you about it here. And it's of course embarrassing, but you know, like I think it is, man. You're not 50, you're not 60, you're not some guy rolling around the elementary school. All right, you're just internet kind of get the best of people, and I understand that. So that's why I do want to talk inside, but I am on your property, so I do, for safety reasons, I do want those normal. I can keep them kind of off you.
Get this as domestically as possible. I mean, I understand why you're here and all that.
Yeah. And it might be, you know, it is it is all voluntary, but, you know, like I said, I have everything saved. I'm like basically square one to square now, so I just figured we should probably just, you know, kind of just address it like that. So like I said, dude, I'm here not a bad person. Are you actually in college? Okay. In Florida?
Yeah, because I had that remove the feeling.
Okay, but you have to go to school and stuff.
Remove the
feeling
out of
one of the tooth. You're not stupid. You're a good guy, and you know, like you used to play football.
Drill the feeling out so they could remove
check out your
it. So,
but not too much on there. But you started though, right?
Senior year.
Okay. There you go, man. Well, starting in Cypher RSD ain't too bad. It's definitely true. Went up against some big, competition.
I'm gonna get him in the water and shit, mate.
If you don't mind,
just a key in the rook.
What else did you have to say? I mean, I'm pretty much done with that. I don't plan on contacting them again, so I don't even have.
Right. Well, it's some other stuff because there's definitely some bad people that are making you run with them online. So it's not just about Lily Penn. I hope you know. But like I said, I think there's kind of a bigger thing at hand that I think you've been wanting to take care of. So I don't think you're proud of any of this, and your parents, I'm sure, wouldn't be the happiest. They are. We can tell them just a friend.
Street.
Okay. So like I said,
street whore.
Okay. Well, I do want to talk about it, man.
Okay. We can talk about that. Sure.
Hold up.
Sorry. Sorry.
Here, guys, come on. On the doorway. Yeah, that's fine. That's totally cool with me.
Giving you a chance to win material.
Okay.
So I think capturing that moment.
We keep the door closed as we can talk, but.
Well, man, it's more like ignoring the threat. I can't make it to where there's any speculation about whether I pull a knife on you, whether I put my hands up on you. So like I said, dude, obviously if I cared about blasting you, your face is already on the profile, so it's not like I had to come talk to you, right? I could have. This is about getting your face out there. I mean, boom! I have a screenshot right here. It's not about that, man. I mean, I would advise you because, like I said, I think they can stand wherever you feel they need to stand. All right.
He's cheating because he knows I'm bored and I want to play the next game so badly. He's figuring on boring me out.
I'm sure
hoping I'll resign so he'll win by default so I can play the next game.
It's more like if those neighbors call anybody.
Sit here and vegetate
there's two creepy guys standing outside the house. Who's just used to say somebody wouldn't show up? They would just probably tell them what's going on. So that's why I said, man, that's why I said when your parents show up, it's easily explainable because they look about your age, I know I'm obviously not your age, but they look about your age, and I really think that because I'm just putting myself in the shoes of a 23-year-old, 23, right? I'm putting myself in your shoes because
this girl's got
it's a lot coming on. But
smelly chili.
There's going to be more questions to ask about them if you stand on the outside versus inside. Because when we're inside, all four of us know what the heck's going on here, and I intend
Let's see how this
keep it that
girl
way.
works.
But
she's a smelly Shelly because she rhymes. And nothing
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
You will never meet an atheist who is You will never meet an atheist who is not anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian. Palestinian.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking.
Ever notice how the Palestinian side supports genocide, killing babies, and whenever this side is getting the foot, they have riots. The supporters of Palestine riot and murder and rape, whereas the supporters of Israel When they're on the losing side, they don't do this. They just band together. They just band together like white people. And they don't do that shit that those stupid Palestinian supporters do.
This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast, hosted by Seth Andrews.
Jasmine Falk is a human rights activist. I'm not trying to oversell it, but you're a human rights activist, focusing mostly on
she's a smelly Shelley.
Women's rights primarily.
She rhymes.
Specifically women's rights in the Middle East.
Because you were
a product of the Middle Eastern upbringing under Islamic rule in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s as a woman growing up in Saudi Arabia under the most fundamentalist and extremist form of Islam.
So are you multilingual then?
I am. I'm trilingual, to be precise.
well, excuse me.
I'd like to say multilingual because I do speak 3 languages fluently. Italian, which is my mother's native tongue. Arabic, my father's. English, obviously, as you can hear me right now. And I'd like to say I can manage in Spanish, but my Spanish always turns into Italian.
But you spent 25 years in Saudi Arabia?
I did.
So
what a hellhole.
What's that look like? You in the veil?
I got
pretty much, yeah. You can imagine from the age of 10, 11, 12. I'd say between 10 and 11 was when I was officially veiled because that's when I hit puberty. Became a woman officially, correct? And so at that point, you cover up, you're out in society and you are treated like an adult woman. Not that adult women are treated well under those circumstances, but essentially even as a child, you're expected to uphold the same exact expectations and rules and regulations and behaviors and conduct that an adult woman would, which is essentially covering from head to toe.
Okay.
And this was during the time when women were literally covered, like face cover, the abaya or the black cape on the shoulders or the head, covering any sign of your physical body, your shape, sometimes even your skin. Some women even wore gloves where you couldn't even see the complexion. And then when you're out in public, there's silence. Your voice needs to be hush-hush.
So the hijab is covering the hair. And is it the niqab that covers the face? Which one makes you look like a beekeeper?
Good question. Okay, all right. Thank you. I love talking about this. So the hijab is essentially what a woman wears around her hair, so you can only see her face. That's a hijab. And the hijab is essentially a devotional Islamic garb. So a woman that wears a hijab, she has devoted herself to the religion and to the faith, and she will always wear the hijab, whether in public, in private, if it's just her male guardians, like her husband, sons, brothers, or father, she doesn't need to wear it. But around any other man, cousins, friends, relatives, whatever, she wears the hijab. And around non-Muslim women. So that's a choice. It's almost like a nun. That's her garb.
Opportunity to win material
with the niqab and the burqa, you probably hear the burqa as well, which is the burqa. Okay, so the burqa is essentially the Bedouin kind of traditional clothing. It's the face cover, but leaves the eyes open. But it leaves the eyes open fairly wide, and there's a line, also almost like a thread that comes down on the nose, on the bridge of the nose, between the eyes. And sometimes there's embroidery or beads. So it's a traditional face cover, and that's the burqa. That's a Bedouin traditional face cover. The niqab, which we also hear about, is not what you see Afghani women wearing. I don't know why that's been called niqab, but the niqab traditionally in the Middle East, where it was born, because it's an Arabic word, is more maybe, well, not the beekeeper. That's what they call niqab. That is a very Afghani thing. Arab women don't wear that. So that is an Afghani thing. That is a totally different thing, different language, different peoples, everything. But the niqab officially, where I was growing up and where it was very much in use, and I've also had to wear it, is essentially, it's a very, very thin slit in front of the eyes, and it's just like this tiny little opening in front of the eyes, and the rest is all covered. So it's similar to the original Bedouin burqa, but it's thinner, the opening is much tighter, and you can barely see through.
What I was interested in when I spoke to other ex-Muslim females, she was like, it actually has the opposite effect. So what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to desexualize you, or it dehumanizes everything. But she's like, it actually produced the opposite, sort of a forbidden fruit effect, right?
Yeah.
Because the more you were covered, the more you were actually sexualized, right?
And especially if your eyes only were visually available, it could do a lot of things with the eyes.
I saw some of those slits in the head covering where they were wearing eye makeup.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a thing?
Technically, they're not supposed to. So if a religious police member of the religious police see that, they will completely harass you, and they'll tell you to cover completely, like just sew the whole veil on your face, which has happened many times. I've experienced that. But usually, when girls are doing that, one of two things will happen: either it's because they just happen to be made up underneath, and they're, that's just, maybe they're not that concerned about having their eyes made up, or they're intentionally doing that because they want some sense of femininity and power, but also just a little bit of attention, because that was the code between young girls and young boys. It's just kind of, this is what I have to offer you, and it was an interesting exchange.
I think it was true in Iran. Tell me if this was the case in Saudi Arabia, that in a court of law, you had to have 2 females witnesses for every 1 male. Is that close?
Thank you for asking that question, because I tend to bring up the conversation around the fact that in the Islamic law, the woman is half the value of the man. And anytime Muslims hear me say this, they get very offended and they say, I did not understand the interpretation of the Quran or of the scripture. Fair enough, perhaps I didn't. I will tell you what that law means, and then you tell me if you think that that is translated into the woman is half the value of a man. So in an inheritance, the woman gets half of what her male relatives get. So if the father dies, the sisters get half of what the brothers get, the mother gets half of what her son gets. So that is one way. The other way is if there is a crime that is committed, you do need, as you mentioned, 2 female witnesses to 1. If you have 1 female witness, it's not enough. If you have a male witness, that's enough.
In public, did you always have to have a male escort?
Ideally, yes. So if the religious police was around you, they would definitely give you a hard time about the fact that you are in public without a male guardian, and that is a problem. The government at the time did not necessarily enforce it through kind of a generic rule, because they expected women would have to go shopping sometimes alone. The man is not always available to the women. And so there were times when, but it depended on why the women were out in public. If you were shopping, if you were doing something reasonable, well, sure, of course, we'll justify it. But to just be out to have fun, of course not.
I have to come back to this term I've heard you use at least twice. Religious police.
Yes.
What's that even look like?
So the religious police were a very prominent, visually visible entity in Saudi Arabia in the primarily 80s and 90s. They're known as the Mutawa. If anybody's hearing this and they've spent any time in Saudi Arabia, including foreigners, everybody knows who the Mutawa were. At the moment, from what I hear, based on the changes that are happening in Saudi Arabia and the kind of the progressive movement that's happened since 2018, supposedly they are no longer in power. I think the establishment still exists, but they don't hold power anymore because the current de facto king, the crown prince, has taken that power away from them. But at the time, basically, they were law enforcement. So you would visually see police officers on the sides of a potentially 1 or 2 men in the middle who are dressed in traditional clothes. If anyone remembers what Osama bin Laden looked like, that's what they look like. The long beard, the headdress, the thobe, which is the long male dress, usually short at the ankle because that's a symbol of devout religious humility, and then the big cape. And they would walk around with a cane, and if they saw women who were not behaving according to their standard, they could beat the woman, they could grab the women, throw them in a suburban GMC truck, and take them to prison.
I love these stories out of Iran with the Iran Revolution, these extremely brave women who are like, they're ripping the head coverings off of the clerics and running down the street, and they are burning their own coverings, and they're standing in the street saying, we are people, and many of those folks are paying with their very lives. Anything like that going on in Saudi Arabia?
Well, at the moment, there's no need for that because a lot of changes have happened. I have not been back to Saudi Arabia since 1999, but I hear, obviously, through the grapevine and obviously everything we see and hear in social media and the news. And so at the moment, I don't think those are practices that are necessarily needing to take place. But when I was growing up, certainly women have tried that and gotten in a lot of trouble.
So right now, it seems like Saudi Arabia is kind of running for office. I mean, how do I say this? I feel like there's a massive PR campaign to westernize it, to make our doors open, and we're like, wow, they've become much more progressive. Look, now women can drive. As if, we're supposed to say, welcome to, welcome to this century.
Right. It's like when they say, look at that dad, he's so good at babysitting his kids. So you don't babysit your kids, they're your kids. That's your job. You should have done that all along. You're doing good things for women, great. Do we need to just applaud it as all of a sudden it's the greatest thing? Sure, we can celebrate it. My concern is we can celebrate it, but we can't forget and deny what has happened in the past. So we don't just gloss over, the 3, 4, 5 decades of oppression that women experienced and not address it, because perpetually this will repeat itself if we don't address it and recognize that it was a problem or a concern.
We're in bed with Saudi Arabia, they're in bed with us. What the hell's that about? Is it just money?
Sure. It started in the 1950s when oil was discovered. A great convenience relationship, which, I try not to be a political analyst in the sense that I want to necessarily analyze, because every government on this planet is, or at some point has been, corrupt. So I can appreciate that has become the global style of communication. That's all fine. What I find a problem with is when we allow our interests to completely bypass human rights. And this is what's happening between the West and countries like Saudi Arabia.
We just look the other way. You're going to execute journalists. You're going to behead people in the streets without due process, as if I was a proponent of beheading. Anyway, the documentary Dissident just put a chill through my spine at the power. Obviously, they're extremely well funded. Their influence is major, and now they're like high-fiving all of these Western powers. It's terrifying.
It is, and what terrifies. So I expect that from governments for the most part to behave that way. What concerns me more is the people, is the lack of understanding and information that people within their societies have. For example, in the United States, we hear a lot of call to action and activism for what's happening in Palestine right now. Fantastic, that's great. What I have concerns with is that the call to action is completely out of place. So yes, they're calling for the horrors that are happening to the children and the people who are being murdered, killed, and starved, and genocided, and all of that. But at the same time, there's this equation of queer rights to the Palestinian rights. I do not see the correlation. Not only is it completely counter to what that culture believes, which is a very homophobic and transphobic and LGBT-phobic and all of that, so it already has a stabilized approach anti these, ideologies, and at the same time, I've never heard anyone say, hang on a minute, what about the women that are there that for centuries have been living under oppression? They have forgotten what the purpose is, and so they walk around wearing the male Arab garb in protest or in solidarity.
Who walks around wearing it?
Westerners, Americans.
Okay, so people who are here, and perhaps for the noblest of reasons, are making a blanket pro-Palestine demonstration.
Yes.
They're dressing in a covering, which is a male covering?
Correct. The keffiyeh, what they wear, which in Palestine it's called a keffiyeh, where I come from it's a shemagh or a hutra, it has other names based on the color and the material. But what they're wearing is the Palestinian one, and it is a symbol of, yes, I understand it's a symbol of Palestine, and by the way, I want everyone to be pro-Palestine and calling out what's happening there. It's the lack of awareness of how much they've bypassed, and they've gotten just to the cherry on top, which is what's happening right now. They have bypassed all the years and decades of oppression and suffering that has happened in the region, not only in Palestine at the hands of the Jewish government, but in the Middle East as a whole under the fundamentalism of Islam. And so at no point do I see that solidarity actually calling for or questioning or opposing or boycotting these relationships between the governments because of human rights or because of women's rights.
So much left to talk about, including the mess overseas with Israel, Palestine, Netanyahu, Zionism, Hamas, and the protests, many student-led protests, pro-Palestine protests that are happening in the West, for better and for worse. Wait a minute, some of the protests are actually not helping? We're going to talk to Jasmine Falk and get her perspective next. Thank you so much for listening. An engaging conversation continues with Jasmine Falk, ex-Muslim and author of the book, The Last Sandstorm. So you opened the can of worms with Israel-Palestine, so let's open it further.
Sure.
So we look at a lot of religious people, and this was my background. Like, my mother and father had a pro-Israel bumper sticker. Like, they believe that Israel is Zion, this is the end times, the Israeli state must be protected at all costs. It's part of, it's part of God's master plan before he returns, and all of that stuff happens, heaven, etc. And so what happened was they shut down any criticisms of what Israel might have done culturally, politically, etc., because Israel must be supported, period. It just became a single sentence. It was a bumper sticker. Today we call it a meme. And I think what a lot of people, even on the left that I have seen, are missing is that Netanyahu may be guilty of genocide, but a ton of Israelis can't stand and disagree with Netanyahu.
Absolutely. That is another example where we are not differentiating between the people and the government. So you can criticize the Israeli government all day long. I'm thrilled to hear that. And Netanyahu and the people. But there are so many Jewish people who don't deserve what's happening to them. And there are so many Jewish people who are speaking up against their own government on behalf of the Palestinians. Now, where I get frustrated with the left and the Western approach and all of that is that not only are they standing pro-Palestine, they are definitely becoming so anti-Jewish that they are forgetting to differentiate between the people and the government, all while they are defending Hamas. That is a very horrifically, fundamentally terrorist organization that perpetuates fundamentalist extremist Islam on the women of the region. So there's nothing redeeming about Hamas. They are terrorists and they are fundamentalist extremists, and I do not understand how the correlation of standing by Palestine equates also defending radicals and then perpetuating that hate against the innocent Jews.
All right, Jasmine, help me understand this. Aren't the Palestinian people under the boot of Hamas that are oppressed by Hamas? I mean, the idea is by many that, well, hey, they could have revolted against Hamas, they must want, an Islamic state, they must want to overtake, they must hate Israelis, all of them, right? We're speaking in binaries again. So, I mean, from your perspective, how do you deal with the mess that is Gaza, Palestine, etc.?
So let's just disclose right away that not all Palestinians are Muslim, and we tend to forget that. There are many Palestinians who are Christian, some also Jewish. So Hamas is an Islamic organization. It's a political Islamic radical terrorist organization. And yes, they do have a chokehold on the Palestinians. But the Palestinians don't necessarily all subscribe to that ideology. If there are some who support Hamas, it's probably because they are the underdog and they have hope that someone will come and rescue them, i.e. Hamas could take over.
Survival.
Absolutely, but it's really hard to hold a very oppressed, essentially tortured people accountable for what they have nothing of, and that is control.
So if someone said, hell, they could have overthrown this, they may want, Islamic rule or Islamic extremism, you would be much more charitable and say these are people who may not have many choices.
Absolutely, they have no choices, in fact. And not only that, I can even appreciate that argument if those same people, who, by the way, are usually also supporting, if they are supporting Palestine, they're also supporting Hamas, because they don't differentiate between the two. So essentially, if we're looking at the people themselves, they are, the greatest victims in this argument. The same argument then could be said to the Jews of the Holocaust. They could have done something about it. You never look at a victim and say, well, they could have revolted, they could have said no, they could have, overpowered all those Nazi soldiers and taken over the concentration camps and broken free.
There's an odd perspective I've got, because I'm an atheist, and I'm not a Zionist, obviously. But I think Israel has a right to exist and protect itself as a sovereign state. I think the Jewish people should be able to have a sovereign state. And at the same time, I'm not a Zionist. I don't think it's part of the end times, nor do I think it has to be protected at all costs, no matter what they do. I don't know. I'm throwing that out there. Like, Israel has a right to be Israel. I don't know, am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I think that also many Arabs would agree with that. At this point in time, where we live and where we exist and how things are going, there has to be an agreement that both of those two things can exist mutually, respectfully, and safely. I think many Palestinians would be okay with living under those circumstances and conditions, and I think many Jews would feel the same way. I think the two-state solution is a very valid approach, but it has to be a two-state solution. It can't be one overpowering the other.
Colonizing, grabbing land, making sure it's disproportionate, we have more than you, which is kind of the thing, right?
Absolutely.
It's been that way for thousands of years.
For thousands of years, the back and forth, and even though both can claim having the right to that land, it is fair to say, due to history, religion, anything you want to throw in the mix, I think this is an area that should be negotiable. And it, it's like historically there has been validity for both, and it's never going to be any different unless they reach a consensus that they will agree, okay, well, we'll figure it out once and for all.
But how do you get around the Holy Land aspect of this? God gave us this land, it is our...
Smell. Where's Pete?
And, I really think that, because I'm just putting myself in the shoes of a 23-year-old, 23, right? I'm putting myself in your shoes because, I understand it's a lot coming on, but there's going to be more questions to ask about them who stand on the outside versus inside. Because when we're inside, all four of us know what the heck's going on here, and I intend to keep it that way. But when it's them outside, it's like, okay, neighborhood, what's going on here, what's going on, and, even if they try to explain... and stuff, I get what you're doing and stuff and all that, but... Yeah, Mark... Well, Mark, it's not as easy as just, it's not as easy as just, I'm not done here. Obviously, you do you, but, the thing is, Mark, it's going to take a little bit more than just a minor inconvenience, I think. I mean, do you want to get your groceries in real quick? No, we can wrap this up when we... What do you need from me, basically? Well, basically, I do want to sit down and actually talk to you about what's going on here because, this doesn't get resolved today. There's basically this can be problems down the road. Am I in trouble with the police? I don't have any handcuffs. I haven't called anybody. But this can be problems down the road. I don't mean just with this. I mean, obviously, we all know what's said here. We all know what's been going on with other stuff. But, it's more like, if accountability is going to be taken now, because like I said, dude, I used to play football. I played in college for a year. I don't like to see former football players, athletes, I don't like to see people having this happen to them. But, look, if they're, what I would recommend, I'm not, my thing isn't getting in your face, okay? My thing is just, I don't want them to stand outside. I don't want neighbors asking questions. So if you want, they can sit with me. You can be on the other side to where your face isn't on camera, if that's okay with you. Yeah. All right. Then if your parents come, we'll just start speaking Spanish and talking about... Well, no, I get that, but... It's just... I'm sorry to meet you like this, man. All right. So, I mean, do you know what I'm here to talk to you about? Okay. So, do you think we should use these, or do you think I can put these up? Or? Okay. All right. Well, let's do that then. So, I don't know, what do you think we'd be talking today, man? Because it wasn't really probably one of you guys. Or she said something to y'all. Well, regardless about that, it's... Sure. I mean, are you prepared to be honest with me? Because I'll be completely honest with you. Yeah, Lily was not Lily. So, but like I said, so I just expect you to be honest in return, man. Because if you're not, I will take that personally, okay? So, what do you think I'd be talking to you about with Lily? What do you mean? What do you think I'd be talking to you about? Like why I'd be here? Oh, the message I sent her? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like what was kind of going on? I'd rather not say. I mean, proof is right there. Everybody knows. Okay, well, Mark, I do just kind of want to, for accountability purposes, I do just kind of, okay. Like, sexually explicit? Yeah. Okay. So I do want to ask, man, because like I said, I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't think you need trouble. I think you just need some help, potentially.
Yeah.
Have you thought that before?
I'm actually seeing a therapist. I've thought about talking to her about it.
It's hard to talk about, isn't it? Yeah. It's, you know, I'm a bigger guy, and, you know, I don't look like the type to be non-judgmental, but I'm telling you, man, I'm not here to judge you for anything, okay? And, like, do your parents know about the makeup stuff?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm not here to judge you about that either, okay? I don't care. I'm I might look like a guy who just, you know, has a shotgun, lives in a trailer, but I know live and let live do it, okay? And I think all your other stuff, the extracurricular stuff, can be separated from the actual stuff we can all agree on, you know? So, how did this all kind of start for you?
I mean, I found with her, I just found her profile popped up.
Not really, just, you know what I mean.
I mean, through Instagram, it, you know, kind of popped up.
Really? How long ago did it start?
Probably when I started puberty.
Like this type of content?
I mean, yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of something that's been kind of looming since like high school, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any friends like know about this? Okay. Yeah, man. This is since your parents are on here, this is definitely a good opportunity to just kind of say it, because this isn't something you can hold for much longer, man. Okay. I'm here. As much as it may not seem, I'm here for you, because in the end, we both just want to stop. Okay. So, I think back then Instagram was kind of more of a Wild West than it is now. So what was it back then?
I mean, the same kind of content. Just, you know.
I don't. Pretend I don't.
555.
Explicit content of people my age around it.
Right. Okay. But you know, if you were like 14, 15, then there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
Is it more like something you got older and never changed?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. Got it. When did you start to realize that this is kind of becoming like an issue?
Around when I turned 18, 19, I was like, oh, I can't really shouldn't be doing this anymore, so.
Okay. Because the girls you were looking at were like still freshmen? Okay. Hey, that freaking happens. It happens. But at least we're not talking like babies. You know, so there's, you know, there are people online that are, so. God, so back in the day on Instagram, like what exactly, like how was this stuff being shown, what was it, like, I really don't know, I don't know about Instagram like past year or two, I don't know, you gotta fill it for me there.
I mean, new pictures and new videos and stuff.
Of what?
Like a girl my age around it.
Okay. Got it. Who's sending this stuff to you?
I'm guessing just other fake accounts that were, you know, into the same stuff.
Okay, were these fake accounts, were they like posing as minors, were they like traders, or who were they?
Posing as minors mostly.
Okay.
You know, minors in trading, stuff like that.
Okay. How many have like sold these stuff?
I've never bought anything from anyone.
How many tried to offer you some stuff?
I mean, I get offers, or I see offers, on stories and stuff pretty regularly, but like I said, I never purchased anything, so just more update stuff.
Okay. Got it. So this all started predominantly on Instagram?
Yeah.
Any other apps this kind of happened on?
No, mostly just on Instagram.
Okay. Got it. So how did, when do you think stuff like Telegram started coming into play?
I don't really use Telegram that much.
Okay. Got it. So not much. So what kind of happened on Telegram?
I mostly use it to buy. That's just, you know, the easier way to Snapchat and Instagram.
Okay. Cool, man. Any other apps besides Telegram or Instagram where this stuff could be happening on?
No, I stay on Instagram.
Okay, got it. So nowadays, who's kind of who are the people kind of sending these types of images and videos back and forth?
I mean, it's all under, like profiles and weird names and stuff, so I don't really know anybody. It's just...
Okay. So no, that's Joseph who lives in Kansas or anything like that. Okay.
I'm just not smart and use my actual page.
Well, I think what that means to me is that you actually aren't a bad person, and you just, I think you let curiosity get a little bit too far rather than actually are malicious. So how do they send these images? Like, are they just sending these images straight up on Instagram, like shoot them from the gallery, send it, or is it sending links? What's going on?
Sometimes it's just, click in the gallery and send it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some of the age ranges of these people are sending?
I mean, they usually ask for age ranges, and I say, about my age when I was in middle school.
Okay, so...
like 16 through 18, 14 through 18.
14 through 18, okay, that's kind of what you request in the way?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And they send like videos, pictures, or both?
Both sometimes.
Okay, got it. How young do you, because I don't think I'm like coming at you saying you're this or that, but I know, I just know being
like stuff, like whenever it makes sense, I don't get it. Either don't get much bad or just don't get it.
Okay. With younger stuff, I mean, how young does some of the stuff go that people are sent?
Pretty young. That's when I say I'm not, I stay away from that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. No, and I feel like that's what I think whatever's going on here is kind of fixable because, look, man. I know kind of getting some tab. But so I'm only asking about like what the limit of some of these other people is. It's kind of VPN, like how young are they sending?
Accept whatever.
Okay, so by no limit are we talking like babies here?
I've noticed that they send a few images or content of babies, and that's when I'm like, yeah. And after that, I'll stop for like a week or two, and then get back to what I usually do.
Okay, got it. Why do you stop for a week or two after that?
When they learn what's going on, it's just like reminds me of what I'm doing, I guess.
Yeah, I respect that. So with the babies, are they sending like pictures, videos, or both?
God damn it.
Okay. Mark, do you have any kids of your own? Okay, are you hoping to one day?
No, I live in a condition I'd rather not pass that on to, kids.
Alright, no, I feel you. But you have nieces and nephews, right?
Yeah, a couple.
Okay. So, what I'm not going to ask you is don't think that...
No.
No, I'm not going to ask you that.
What's up? Get back to me.
No, I mean, I know you just care about protecting them, right?
Yeah.
God damn it.
Okay. So... These videos of infants, don't think I think you like watching them, but I do want to know what happens to them because I want to kind of figure out what these other people put in on.
God damn it.
Too young, I don't.
What's in the thumbnail though?
Usually just pictures of the infants with stills of, babies or toddlers.
Okay. Got it. So what would you say the youngest that maybe you accidentally watched was? You had to put a number on it.
I couldn't tell you, like I said, as soon as I see a thumbnail, it's, she doesn't look like she's in puberty or anything, I don't watch it. Yeah, that's probably why.
Alright, we'll just tell them that. We'll just completely change the subject. What would you, do you like work? Do you work?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll tell them something. Let's say it's about work.
I'm missing like a sore tooth.
Well, how's it going? No problem. Back door or front yard?
You could do it here.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to go to where probably can't hear over there. Yeah, here's actually good. Okay, yeah, man, I told you, man, like I said, I'm not trying to bring any bull to anybody here, right? Okay. So I do want to touch on some of the stuff with Lily. Like, what did you guys talk about?
Basically teaching her, about.
Okay. What was that supposed to happen?
It wasn't. I never meant for it to actually happen. I was just kind of playing along.
Okay. What was it supposed to happen?
Kyle, I think.
Okay. Did she give like an address and stuff?
She did, but like I said, I was planning on actually going.
Yeah, no, it's quite a drive. How far was Kyle from here?
Like 3 hours, 2.5, something like that.
Got it. Did you put it in when there was traffic or no traffic? Just curious.
Well, actually, that's right by Kyle, so it's about like 2.5.
Got it. Do you know what part of Kyle her apartments were in? Okay. Yeah, like I said, man, I'm not trying to embarrass you. I'm not trying to read through all of this, but yeah, no. I mean, were any explicit pics sent her way? Okay. Got it.
Well, I guess it wasn't really her requests from them, but.
How many, how old did she tell you she was?
14?
Okay, are you sure about that, or did she say something else? Okay. Well, I mean, she said 13, but maybe, one off, who remembers?
Yeah, 2 Instagram profiles, and I think there was 2 different ages on there.
Okay, got it. I see. So why were we not going to go over there?
Because I didn't actually want to go through it.
Why's that?
Because I knew it was wrong.
Okay. So you say you knew like this was like a minor I could potentially be talking to right now? Okay, got it. So is there anybody you know in person or know the names that could be into this type of stuff? Okay. Got it. I already know that, like I said, I haven't told. But what do you do? I'm just curious. Okay. Are you going to school for like, you don't have to tell me, I mean, I know you probably go to Lone Star, but like, what do you go to school for?
Right now I'm just doing all the basics. I don't really have a degree yet.
Okay. What's the dream job you're hoping to do?
Not really sure, so just trying to figure it all out.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, man, like I said, you're smart. I mean, did you have a good GPA in high school?
Average.
Alright. Okay. Are you a Bitcoin guy or a Ethereum guy? Neither. What do you think? You a Bitcoin guy or Ethereum guy? Neither. What do you think of crypto? God, do you ever get stocks or anything? No investments. Man. Doesn't give you like stock options?
I'm sure they do, but I'm not really into that.
Okay. Got it. So, do they ever charge us on Cash App and stuff like that?
It's been on there a few times, yeah.
Where they've been trying to sell on Cash App? Okay. Got it. Do you happen to know what crypto website it would be that they're trying to tax you on?
Like I said, I don't pay attention to the paid stuff.
Okay. That's your lawyer friend? Oh. She know about this. Okay, I'll tell her. Get the cameras out. How's it going?
What?
What identification did you give him?
Identification?
How do I know you're not a cop trying to arrest him?
Wait, what?
You came to his house that he doesn't even live. We live 3 hours away from here. No identification. No, I work for. No, you don't have a work badge or anything?
Well, I mean, do you not know?
I don't. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be upset. My mom's a lawyer. This is my initial. Hey, I forgot it. It doesn't have any attention.
Well, I mean, I can give you my ID here.
I need a business card. I need something to know that you actually work.
Well, if you use my off day, then I can give you my ID.
Okay.
I'm not a cop.
Okay. someone from upper is someone's doing something. No, but they are recording us on camera. Yeah. And apparently this is his day off.
You just don't tell her what the truth is? No? Okay.
Do you want me to leave?
It's probably, well, it's up to you.
Okay, look, if your mom calls me in a panic, I will give you the space because I trust you, but I do not need it. I'm going inside to talk to your mom.
Like I said, I'm trying to tell her. Well, I'm not, but like I said, dude, ain't no one's making you stand here, but like I said, dude, I've been doing these solid after solid of not telling these people. And
what else do you want from me? I told you that and anything else.
okay, look. Look, I'm not going to show them this. Probably swing on over this way here. But look, some of the stuff is really, again, I'm not going to read all of it, but what was kind of the appeal here of that doesn't know?
Doesn't know anything about teaching.
Okay. Is that kind of something that was exciting to you?
I didn't go over this one here. I also, I do go do this, it's more of like, your natural words come. This is the erotica stuff. This is the erotica element just coming out and stuff for teenagers. Take that plot advance.
God damn it.
What would be the youngest age that's like trying to get you, like, probably more than that. Would be like 15 on this, would be more like pictures. 13 or 14. Okay.
Goddamn Christ. God damn it.
So, what you should do, I'll do this all here. You know where airplane mode is? Okay. I'm not going to ask you the passcode. Just pick on airplane mode, just leave it right there. Okay. I'll have a word with her. Go outside or me or well, you know. Let's just go back and what's her name? Cat. Alright. Alright, Cat. Oh, you got that to a hurricane. Makes sense. Okay. Alright. So, this is kind of what's been going on. I want you to rip up some stuff here. It's my problem.
I promise I won't do way worse.
Alright.
I'm not. I'm a little bit of a violent person, but not towards others.
Alright. Hurricane doing it here.
There's a reason they named after me.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so I want to give you the context of this first. Well, man, you know nuts. So this was Mark hitting up an account to trade around child. Wait, okay, come on, man. Are you going to be honest or not? Be honest.
No, he doesn't have to be honest with you. I'm not going to try to take that to jail.
Well, it's more like honest with you. Well,
He doesn't have to be honest with me in front of y'all. We will have our own discussion
okay,
later.
well, that's all right. I'll talk to you.
Boom. Donkey Kong.
Sure. He's asking us to all the stuff to trade around. He's on the left.
Okay. Is there any help?
Not with me, no, but with other people, yes.
So y'all are claiming their shop saved from his peril to someone else. Okay.
Well, it's not our place, it's his words and
This is words, so he didn't shut up even though I talked to you numerous times? Even though you have a lawyer on the way?
Now fuck up and take that
so, this part here, you can just read through this. This is to a 13-year-old online. And he's also there's a picture of that there.
I know who my partner is.
What?
You? So don't bring that.
You say you should her that. It's a beautiful thing, I think. I'm a big Queen fan and human movie.
This is not your case.
That's the same.
You're not going your ways.
God fucking damn it. God fuck it.
How do you don't figure this out?
Well, we figured out that he was involved in trading child who's following on Instagram, and a 13-year-old girl, there's numerous underage kids talked to him, and that happened to be us.
Okay, question. How would he know they're 13?
Well, yeah, it was the very first message. I just got it right there.
You don't cut your off.
Yeah. I thought he said uncut. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I guess.
Did you exchange? Don't answer that. Did you exchange notes?
Yes.
Jesus Christ! This is my living room! Jesus Christ! This is my living room! I thought you were going to propose to me. No, you're not. Look, I'll make sure you don't go to jail forever, but after that... Alright, so what is your next move? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That was not intentional.
You're a good cat.
You're not trying to ruin yourself.
No, absolutely not. Because I'd have to call your mom on you.
And my mom will protect me no matter what.
Clearly. So,
what's your next step?
well, step over here, and then... Well, basically, so, my thing is here, you know, again, like... Well, actually, this isn't incriminating, so I'm going to ask you this. Why would you tell Lily that you're 20 instead of 23? That's not incriminating, that's just getting mad.
No, you don't answer that. You don't answer anything.
Okay, that's fine. So, Gary told Lily that he's 20 or 23, the biggest community college in Florida. When he goes to Lone Star.
He doesn't go to Lone Star.
Yeah, he does.
No, he doesn't.
Alright, well, HCC.
No. He doesn't go to any university in Houston.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Again, like I understand he's young, so we just kind of didn't get that much.
I'm trying to streamline the process. What is our next step?
Well, I think he needs intense help.
I think inpatient, first off.
Yeah.
You're changing your therapist, you're changing your psychiatrist. You're moving out of my apartment that I pay for.
He doesn't help care rent or anything. I thought he worked. Okay, well, man, obviously because he told me to not tell you the truth, so I mean, that's just why I said that. I was just...
Who are you?
My name is Gordon Flowers.
What do you work for?
We're both kind of make sure the kids don't talk to adults online and adults don't talk to kids.
Cool. So, what kind of authority do you have?
Oh, I don't. I'm just concerned that our youth are being hurt, and that, you know, he's also, I consider him part of the youth, and I just feel like he's just been up to some stuff that he doesn't need to be in.
Obviously.
I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. He never mentioned that to Lily, the 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Did he ever mention to you that he had a girlfriend as well? With Lily? Jesus Christ.
I'm not answering any questions.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
I don't care. At this point, it's not about me. It's about making sure he doesn't go to jail. That's my only concern.
Well, I mean, of course. I mean, may I?
Have you reported this? Are you going to report this?
Well, do you think I should?
I would like the opportunity to put him in inpatient help for the rest of the semester first. I understand if that's not reasonable, but that is what I would like to do. And I will be paying for it since you're my insurance.
Well, let me just ask this again. If this was anybody else, like say, for example, maybe he's 23, say they're the same age, and you caught him with accomplishments, what would you do?
Get them help. I'm a social worker. I have a master's in social work. I've done these classes. I know what's going on.
Okay.
He needs help, obviously.
Right.
So,
What if he was 50?
still needs help.
Right. Right.
So at this point, unless you would like to do anything further, unless you have any more questions,
Yeah, I do.
what else you got?
Well, it's just... Like, this stuff is just, I think, a little bit concerning here when he says stuff like this.
talk to me this way when I ask you to. I want to rip this up, so you take that from me?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. What next?
Okay, I'm also concerned when, I mean, it seems like there's a major attraction to this 13-year-old girl here. When he says, stuff like good night, Lily, I'll be thinking of you.
Please.
Sure.
I believe you.
Okay.
I think you should take a walk. I think you should take a walk to that stop sign and back, so I don't lose my...
Hey.
Is that okay with you?
Why? You can take a walk by all means, dude.
But he can't take his phone?
Well, he can do whatever he wants, but I'm just letting...
Hey, how are y'all today? Nice hat. Y'all both recording? I don't understand why. Yeah, that he gets in a random car with. His mom called because he thought y'all were beating him up because she couldn't find him. We don't know y'all. We don't know that. All I know is all three of y'all are significantly bigger than both of us.
Right.
So my defense is always that. So let's go to the next point.
Okay. Kat, I do want to talk with you if you don't mind just having him take a walk.
I suggested you took a walk a second ago.
Huh? Yeah, I think Mom did, or...
I told her to
leave it What just happened? So, yeah, so we have a group, we catch all my stuff. Just the drum, I'm not sure what's happening. I think I've seen you. Probably have. So this individual wore, he was hitting up a 13-year-old girl. We were posing that we were in Kyle, we live in Houston. And he, obviously from Houston, and basically he was, he got very sexual, he arranged a sexual meeting with her, didn't show up, obviously, he was with Kyle. But, he was all Texas, yeah, but he was doing all the texting from Houston. And we do have an account as well, where we basically pose as a we don't trade any child. We just basically, chat with other like this stuff. So he told us on the account that he has links of child followers on his phone. He didn't send us any, but he said he has those. So we have interviewed him in person today, and he admitted to us, just like he said in front of you, that he does in fact have child on his phone there on the Telegram app, and then he's traded stuff. He's received videos young as infants, and this is all right here. Basically everything, basically text messages, like as far as messaging. Yeah. So the sexual meeting thing to her, she calls this kid, and but yeah, and then he told us in person that he used the Telegram app to trade child. You get somebody's idea. Megan. That's great. You get somebody's idea. Megan.
Arrescuated.
That's great.